Welcome to the final episode of this Bumblebee build. Today we'll take a drive on some mountain twisties, have a closer look at the car from all angles, and learn about the final challenges I had getting this LE fully sorted. Well, I'm happy to report that the car is running amazing. It turned out better than I could have hoped, but it wasn't without its headaches. Soon after the car moved under its own power, I noticed some issues with the engine, which I wanted to bring you up to speed on. As you may have seen in other episodes, I rebuilt the 2056 engine for my Bumblebee from the ground up using a Raby 9590 cam since I wanted to continue using D-Jet, and 96mm pistons for a bit more displacement, bringing it up to 2056. Len Hoffman built the heads and decked the case to ensure the cylinder registers were perfect. Then I had a local machine shop polish the original crank, and European Motor Works did an align bore on the case. When I went to assemble everything, the crank was binding, so I sent the case back to European Motor Works and was told that they needed to clean up the bore a bit. So after reassembling everything, you'll remember that the engine rotated well and it roared to life on the very first try. The car pulled strong and ran cool, with cylinder head temps below 375 even on the steepest grades. But when the engine warmed up past 180 degrees of oil temperature, my Dakota digital gauge showed the oil pressure dropping off a cliff like a rock. One time, as I pulled into the garage, the gauge flashed 0, which is obviously not what you want to see. This is a fresh build with new machining, so my first instinct was that the gauge or the sender were faulty. So I hooked up an analog one and the numbers seemed to agree with the digital. Knowing that the engine was exposed to really low pressure, I wanted to see if any damage was done. So I checked the screen and cut open the filter. There was some crud in there, but no indications of anything metallic or catastrophic. I learned that there's a difference between flow and pressure. Clearly the engine had good flow, but not enough pressure. The first suspect was the oil pressure relief circuit. There's a piston on a spring in a bore on the right side of the engine, which allows a portion of the oil to bypass the main circuit if the pressure is high, like when the car is cold and first started. In these 50-year-old engines, the bore can be scored, causing the piston to get stuck and not fully close off the opening when pressure is normal. I took out the Tangerine Racing relief valve unit and replaced it with an OEM setup, and then put it back, but in both instances, the pressure dropped way too low when the engine was warm. So the next suspect was the secondary relief valve. On some cases, like mine, there's another piston spring setup near the number 1 cylinder's pushrod tubes. So I bought a block-off slug to take that bore out of the equation, and still, low oil pressure when warm. They say there's things you know, things you don't know, and things that you don't know that you don't know, and this is one of those times. So I asked Jake Raby what he thought, and he immediately said, wait for it, bearing clearances, which is not what you want to hear. But Jake has seen it all, so I bit the bullet and dropped the engine and took it to a local pro, Eric Allred at Ready Motorsports here in Salt Lake City. So I'm here at Ready Motorsports and we're going to finally get to the bottom of this loss in oil pressure. Eric, the owner, has found some interesting things about the case that I used. Yeah, so what did we find here, Eric?
I don't want to say nothing. No, the weird part is, and I can't understand how, but you can feel it with your finger. If you come, if you on the bottom of the saddle, if you come towards you, you can feel the edge of that lip. But if you go away, it's gone. So somehow.
I feel it. There's absolutely. It feels like maybe
only a few
three thou maybe.
Mm-hmm. It's not much, but it's enough that it locks the crank up when you torque it. But it's difficult to see, but you can feel it with your fingernail, huh?
Yeah, I can definitely feel it.
Like one way, but not the other. And then the top is the opposite. So somehow the saddle has shifted, and I have no clue how that could happen. It doesn't make sense. Well, the other one is this one, there's no press fit to this guy. It's pretty much right on the money, and typically you'll see a little bit of press.
I see. So there's no what do they call it? Crush.
Yeah. So
and even there, you can feel there's a pretty heavy duty ridge there.
Yeah. So it's.
I mean, it's
odd, isn't it? I've not seen a case do that. I mean, you can't.
There's definitely a ridge here.
You can't line bore it without it being bolted together, and it's dowel pinned. So how did it move? I have no clue.
I don't know either.
It doesn't make any sense, and I have no telltale signs of why.
It turns out the case that I had a line board twice apparently still had some machining issues. So I got a different case with low miles on it. Here's the new old case that I got. And the story behind this case is that there's a guy, Rory, who is a master Porsche technician in the Northeast, who retired like several years ago. He found out that I was looking for a new case. He said, I've got an engine in my garage that has been sitting there for 25 years. So I know that this engine hasn't run since the 90s, if maybe longer, which means hopefully there's a good amount of life in it.
Not a lot of runtime on it.
Not a lot of runtime. Now I've checked the decking on it, like just with a straight edge, and it seemed pretty straight, like it doesn't need decking. But it had never been opened before he took all the innards out. So this is all, you know, hopefully if everything's cool, it'll be stock bearings.
Okay, cool.
But obviously it needs a little TLC.
Needs a bath.
It needs a bath. Needs a spa. It does. It needs a spa day. One spa day coming up for this puppy.
Cool. It still has all the old.
Yeah, all the old markings and stuff. And it is a GA engine.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's the same class.
Cool.
Although, and this one's 002. This one's 007. So it's a little bit older, but not by much probably. So we'll use the oil spreader.
Now we gotta get a wrench for it.
Yeah.
Fine.
What happens in here is you tighten that nut and it spreads this apart and splits the case. So, lovely. And just so you know also, when people talk about decking the case, it's about making sure that these registers are perfectly perpendicular to where the head is. What happens is over time, they'll sink down, and if they do, the cylinder will kind of tilt inward and not seal perfectly against the head.
I should hear Bugs Bunny say "Open Sesame."
There we go. See, this is a man who does this. Red E Motorsports, y'all. That's where we're at.
There we go. That doesn't look too bad. That could be cleaned up pretty good. Some runtime on it.
Still has the, that's an original bearing.
Yep. Cool. Should we go put it in the spa?
Let's put it in the spa.
All right. Yep.
All right, giving it a spa day.
This thing's fantastic.
Oh, look at that.
Woo!
Should we take the cylinder studs, the head studs off?
Yeah, we'll do that later. Gives us something to grab it back.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, we can leave this in here for a few hours, then we can hunt take it for another couple hours. We'll see what she does, huh?
It turns out the new old case checked out perfectly and no machining was needed. While we were at it, we replaced the crankshaft so we could use stock bearings all around. So the engine is back from Red E Motorsports, and Eric Allred rebuilt it with the new case. Now it's time to put it all back together again. Success. So you guys can see at 210, 209 temperature, I've got 37 pounds of pressure at 3,000 RPM. The car now maintains great pressure even when the oil is hot. I brought the car to P&B Performance for a couple finishing touches and final cut and polish on the paint. And here she is in all her glory. Some final stats. I started this project in November of 2019, sent to paint in March of 2020, and the world, as you'll remember, shut down for a little bit. I got the car back from paint in November of 2020. Reassembly happened for about 6 months, and the car moved under its own power in June of 2021. I moved out to Utah in spring of 2022 and had the engine rebuilt in the fall of 22. The car was officially finished in the spring of 2023, and I've been enjoying it ever since. If you take out the pandemic, and my move to Utah and the machining problems with the engine, the total time it took for this car to go from roller to road was about 20 months. So what's it like to drive? Let's hit the road and find out. I'll tell you, the 2056 definitely pulls a lot stronger than the regular 2-liter. I mean, it's just a butt dyno. I don't have actual numbers on that, but I do have a 2-liter, and it definitely feels like it pulls stronger. So just to give you a sense of how this works. So my CHT right now is about 276, oil temperature 193, and I got 33.5 PSI at about 2700. Now you'll see as I go down this hill, when the load adjusts, that the CHT goes down. Yeah, it's already at 254, which is really a testament to how these heads are made and the engineering behind air-cooled cars in the first place. They really adjust rapidly to changing load conditions. Now it's at 246. I'm at 36 PSI with about 2,600 RPM. 193 for the oil temp. It's really coming up to full temperature here. And that usually happens about 195 to 210. Depends on the ambient temperature, what's going on outside. We'll downshift now and head back home. There's 4. 3. There's 2. And the turn signal automatically canceled off. I don't know if you picked that up. All right. Come to a complete stop, and we'll go into first. This car is a little different from my other 914s in that I rarely have to fight to put it into first gear. It's just luck of the draw. I guess the transmission that I got with this car is a good one. But it shifts really smoothly and super fun to drive. There is nothing like driving a well-sorted classic Porsche on Utah's legendary roads. Tanner Seymour, who's a noted car shooter, was kind enough to get some great footage of the car doing what it was designed to do. So looking back, I learned a few really important lessons from this experience. First, measure and inspect everything multiple times and ways, especially after machining. Reagan's saying of trust but verify definitely holds true here. 2, don't assume that new parts are good just because they're new. And 3, sometimes you have to call in the cavalry and move backward before you can go forward, with any kind of speed anyway. I'm pleased to say that I put over 1,000 miles on the new engine, and the Bumblebee is amazing. I'm having a ton of fun with it here in the Mountain Twisties, but it's almost time to pass it on to the next caretaker and begin another project. A real deal 914-6 barn find. It hasn't run under its own power in 40 years. So keep an eye out for that. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching this series. Be safe and enjoy.